Okay, let me show you a little bit about how to use this GeoGebra graphing calculator website. It's just the www.geogebra.org/graphing. And this website does all sorts of things. It's going to show you how to graph, which I'll show you in a minute. It also can be used just as a scientific calculator, which is really useful when we have to do operations with fractions and other things because we can actually visually see it as a fraction. So let me give you an example of that. If I wanted to write 2/3, I would write 2, the divide sign, which gives me the fraction, thirds. Then I use the over arrow, and this gets me out of the denominator. And that we have to push that every time because otherwise when you start typing, it thinks that it's still in the denominator. So then maybe I want to multiply that by 7/8. Then I would do 7, divide for my fraction line, 8. And what does that equal? It equals 7/12. Now maybe I had to have the answer as a decimal. And so I saw it as a fraction, but I also wanted to check maybe all of the things that 2/3 times 7/8 could be. And it also could be approximately 5.83 repeating. Okay, so that's kind of fun. There's other things that it can do. It will show you our order of operations. So if you have a big, long mathematical statement that you need to, an expression that you need to simplify, we could do something like 3 times 6. This is how we'll get up to the exponent, maybe cubed. And then we have to use the over arrow again to get out of the exponent. So kind of get comfortable using this over arrow so that you can see things where they're supposed to be. Minus, and maybe they had in parentheses 7 plus 10, parenthesis, divided by 2. And now we have this whole expression right here simplified right here. And once we want to know what it equals, it's 1279 divided by 2, which is approximately 639 and a half, a little more than a half, okay? So, and that comes from this exponent right here. So this calculator can be used for all of these things. It can also be used for graphing, and let me show you how to use it for graphing. So let's get rid of these things for a minute. Clicking these 3 dots allows us to duplicate, delete, or click it to settings. So I'm going to show you how to graph now using this because that's also a useful function. If you need to double check to see if you've actually graphed something correctly, you can type in now the equation and just like it reads, and it will show you the graph. Let me give you an example. Something in slope-intercept form might be y equals 1 divided by 2 over arrow x minus 3. And you'll notice right here, here's my y-intercept at -3, and here's how my graph is moving. It's going up 1 over 2. So my slope was up 1 over 2. And you can see that as we type it in, it gives us this graph. A really cool feature is that we don't have to have it in slope-intercept form to see the appropriate graph. Let me give you an example of something in standard form that it can also graph. So something like 3x plus 2y equals 5. And it will show us right here the line. It actually has a negative slope, which is sometimes confusing because we see this 3 in front of the x and we think, oh yeah, there we go, it's +3, that's the slope. But we forget that we have to simplify it, and that as we subtract this, we solve it for y, so simplify it to slope-intercept form. And that would entail subtracting 3x from both sides of the equal sign and also dividing everything by 2. So this is kind of useful for double checking, making sure that you did simplify your equations correctly, making sure that you did graph them correctly. And it's very useful to do things like solving equations when you need to know maybe a fraction, something divided by something else. So maybe you needed to know 5 divided by 3, so this fraction, divided by this fraction, 6/9. And you can see it's already kind of giving me the answer as I go, but I can see the answer also as a decimal by clicking on this approximate. So it will give me both. If you have any questions, let us know. Thanks.